My father showed up uninvited, 3 sharp knocks. No warning, just thunder and authority. He didn't say hello. He dropped a folder on my marble counter and said 850,000 by noon tomorrow. No apology, no explanation, just an order. And when I opened that folder, I saw my own signature forged in perfect ink. I smiled the way someone does right before cutting a wire. Because that night, I stopped being the family's solution and started becoming their consequence. What happened after still keeps me up sometimes. Before I tell you everything hit like and tell me, have you ever been the one who finally said enough? People like to say family is everything. But in my house, family was a currency, and I was the bank. I'm Elena, and I grew up in a Chicago suburb where appearances mattered more than the truth. My father, Victor Ward, built his business on control. Every dinner was a board meeting. Every favor came with interest. My younger sister, Melissa, learned early how to play his game, all soft eyes, trembling lips, and perfect timing. Whenever she cried, he'd stop the world to comfort her. Whenever I succeeded, he'd warn me not to show off. Our mother tried to balance him out, but after she passed, the house shifted. Silence became the rule, and obedience became love. I was 20 then, already paying tuition with scholarships, while Melissa got a new car to stay motivated. Dad said I was the strong one. What he meant was you can handle being used. Fast forward 10 years. I had my own consulting firm downtown, glass walls, city view, and a reputation built from 16-hour days and 0 shortcuts. Success didn't make me feel proud. It made me useful again. My father would brag to anyone who listened that his daughter managed portfolios for CEOs, but when we spoke, it was never to ask how I was only, "Can you take care of this for me?" I told myself it was okay. It was family. And family always comes first, right? Then came the night that cracked everything open. It was early winter, one of those Chicago nights when the wind cuts straight through your coat. I was finishing a report when 3 knocks hit my door hard, deliberate like a verdict. I opened it, and there he was, Victor Ward. Gray hair, slicked back suit, immaculate, holding a folder so thick it bent in his hand. He didn't ask to come in. He just walked past me, the smell of expensive cologne following like smoke. Melissa's husband made some mistakes, he said, pacing my kitchen. "They owe $850,000. You'll handle it." I thought I misheard. "Excuse me." He didn't repeat it. He just opened the folder pages of numbers, loan documents, receipts, and then at the bottom, my name, my signature. Except it wasn't mine. For a moment, the room tilted. I stared at that neat black ink and realized he'd forged it. My own father had used my name, my credit, my reputation to guarantee Melissa's debts. He kept talking, explaining, justifying, until the words turned to noise. I remember his tone more than his sentences, that old authority that didn't need my consent. "Family doesn't turn its back when things get hard," he said finally, and I smiled, a small, quiet smile that made him step back without realizing why, because for the first time I wasn't afraid to lose them. That night, while the city hummed below my window, I poured myself a drink, stared at the folder and whispered, "All right, Dad, you want control. Let's see what happens when I take it back." The next morning, my phone lit up before sunrise. Melissa, then Dad, then both. I didn't answer. I just watched the names flash and fade until the screen went black again. When I finally called back, Melissa's voice trembled like a rehearsed song. "Please, Lena, don't be mad. Derek just made a bad investment. We'll pay you back. We'll pay you back." The same words she'd said when I covered her tuition when I bought her first house, when she maxed out their joint credit card by accident. "Melissa," I said quietly. "Dad forged my name." She went silent for a beat. Then she whispered, "He did it for us. You know how he gets." That sentence stuck to my skin like oil. You know how he gets. As if manipulation were a personality trait, not a choice. By afternoon, Dad showed up again, this time at my office. The receptionist looked terrified as he marched in. Coat unbuttoned, tie, loosened, pretending he owned the place. 850 by noon, he said, like we were in a boardroom. Those people aren't patient. I looked around at my staff, pretending not to listen. My face burned. "You don't get to threaten me here," I said. He smirked. "You've got the money, Elena. Don't make me remind you who raised you." That was the moment something shifted. The humiliation, the control, the lifelong conditioning, all of it condensed into one sharp, steady breath. I wasn't angry yet. Anger comes later. I was awake. After he left, I sat alone in my office. Lights dimmed the city outside, wrapped in fog. I thought about every time I'd saved them, every check I'd written, every thank you that really meant "you owe us more." And suddenly, the guilt I'd carried for years cracked open. Beneath it was something colder clarity. That night, I drove to my mother's old house, the one Dad kept locked but never sold. The key still worked. Dust floated in the flashlight beam as I walked through rooms that once smelled like cinnamon and Sunday dinners. On her desk sat a small wooden box. Inside were her journals, her handwriting neat and certain. Kindness without boundaries becomes servitude. I closed the lid and smiled. By the time I stepped back into the cold, the plan had already started forming, precise, deliberate, inevitable. The next 48 hours moved like a storm that only I could hear. Outwardly, I was calm, answering emails, drinking coffee, showing up at meetings. Inside, every word my father had ever used as a weapon replayed in perfect clarity. Family comes first. Don't embarrass us. You're the strong one. It all sounded like a single command obey. Not this time. That night, I called Claire Nguyen, my attorney, and the one person who knew what my silence really meant. "I need to lock everything down," I told her. She didn't ask why. She just said, "Quiet or public quiet," I replied. "For now." Within an hour, the firewall went up. Every trust account and property Dad had linked to my name was frozen. I revoked his signatory rights from the family foundation he'd attached to my Social Security number for convenience. The word tasted bitter now. While the documents processed, I started building my own. I scanned receipts, tuition, wedding costs, mortgage payments, transfers labeled temporary help, each one proof that I'd been financing their comfort for years. I didn't realize until then how thick the pile would be. Claire called again near midnight. "You're sure about this? Once it's done, there's no going back." "I'm already gone," I said. The next morning, I packed a plain cardboard box. Inside, copies of every wire transfer, property, deed, and loan note. On top, a printed message. "You taught me control, Dad, but control without honesty is manipulation. This isn't revenge, it's accountability." When I sealed the box, the sound of tape cutting through air felt like punctuation at the end of a long sentence. At dawn, I left it on the foyer table, right beneath the portrait of him shaking hands with a governor, the same smile he used when cornering people. I stood there for a full minute staring at the photo, remembering how proud he'd looked when Melissa married Derek, how he'd called her my delicate one, and me, my insurance. By the time sunlight touched the skyline, my bags were packed. Passport, laptop, one photo of Mom and me at the lake. I booked a one-way flight east. No goodbyes, no explanations. When I closed the apartment door behind me, the silence felt different, alive, charged like freedom, waiting for confirmation. 12 hours from then, Victor and Melissa would stand on that same doorstep demanding money, and all they'd find would be that box, my final gift, wrapped in truth. At exactly noon, my building's doorbell camera caught the first shadow. Victor Ward didn't knock. He announced himself the way men who never hear no do. His reflection flashed in the brass door handle, jaw-tight coat, immaculate, the same arrogance he'd worn my entire life. Behind him, Melissa shifted her weight from one heel to the other, eyes red face powdered to hide the wreck. "Open up, Elena." His voice cracked through the intercom. We had an agreement. He pounded the door again. The camera picked up every echo, every vibration against the silence I'd left behind. Then he saw it, the plain brown box sitting neatly on the marble floor inside, visible through the glass panel. My handwriting clean and even stretched across the top, Victor Ward. Melissa leaned forward. "What's that?" He frowned. "Probably a note." "She's being dramatic." He tried the handle locked, of course. Then, like control itself demanded submission, he pulled a small metal tool from his pocket. My father had always believed every door would open for him eventually. When he stepped inside, the camera blinked red. He set the folder he'd brought his copy of the debt on the counter beside the box. Then he tore the tape open. Papers spilled out like confession. Wire transfers, signed checks, copies of every payment I'd ever made on their behalf. The deeds to Melissa's house and Derek's failed business, all under my LLC. A printed email trail between him and a broker approving a forged signature mine. "What the hell is this?" he muttered, flipping pages faster. Melissa hovered behind him. Is she suing us?" He ignored her. His fingers trembled. The man who built empires on intimidation was finally holding proof of his own collapse. Then he found the USB drive. Small, silver, marked with a single word, "Listen." He plugged it into the small Bluetooth speaker on my counter, the same one he'd once called a waste of money. My voice filled the room low and steady. "You taught me that family comes first, but you also taught me how to lie, how to control, how to take. What's inside this box isn't revenge, Dad. It's the truth. You called it family. I called it debt. Now we're even." A pause. Then the faint sound of waves recorded from the main shoreline I was watching that very moment. Melissa covered her mouth. She recorded this. He didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the last photo sitting on top of the documents, the three of us at my college graduation, his arm around Melissa, his hand resting on her shoulder. I stood on the edge of the frame, cropped by someone who thought symmetry mattered more than daughters. He reached for the note beneath it, my handwriting again. "If you ever loved me for who I am, not for what I can fix, you'll stop knocking on my door and start looking in a mirror." His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He sank into one of my bar stools, the leather creaking beneath the weight of everything he'd built. Melissa whispered, "Dad, what do we do?" He whispered back, "We lost her." For once there was no command, no instruction, just defeat. Across the country, I sat on the porch of a small cottage overlooking the Atlantic. My laptop buzzed with notifications from Claire. Each message was surgical, clean trust secured, power of attorney revoked, Ward Holdings audit approved. I watched the tide climb the rocks and thought of him staring at that box, of Melissa's eyes wide with the realization that the family hierarchy had flipped, and I was no longer holding the safety net. By evening, the ripple hit the surface. Ward Holdings board called an emergency meeting. The bank demanded verification on a series of unauthorized accounts. By nightfall, every dollar my father had hidden beneath my name was frozen. The next morning, my phone, a new number, buzzed with messages from Claire. Victor Ward resigned. Board replaced him with interim CEO. Melissa called crying, said Derek disappeared. "Do you want me to respond?" I typed back, "No." Let her learn the silence she never gave me. Days blurred into calm. I went walking every morning, breathing air that didn't smell like concrete and control. In the afternoons, I read by the window, ocean light spilling across pages. Sometimes between paragraphs, I'd imagine the look on his face when the last mask cracked. Then one night, my laptop chimed a new video file sent from my doorbell camera. Mrs. Callahan, my elderly neighbor, had forwarded it with a note. "Thought you'd want to see this, honey." I opened it. Melissa stood on my porch under the same porch light. Her mascara streaked her designer coat, slipping off one shoulder. She held the brown box in both hands, shaking. "Lena," she screamed, "we're family. You can't just vanish." Her voice cracked on the last word. She dropped to her knees, crying not for me, but for the life that had finally stopped cushioning her. I watched until the video ended, until the still frame froze on her face mid-cry. Then I closed the laptop. That was the hardest part, learning that walking away doesn't mean you stop caring. It just means you stop saving. A week later, my father called. Unknown number, but his silence on the line was unmistakable. "Elena," he said, finally, his voice stripped of its usual steel. We need to talk." I didn't respond at first. The wind outside howled like the city had followed me east. Why, I asked. "Because I finally understand what you did." He inhaled shakily. "You embarrassed me. But you were right. Melissa's furious, Derek's gone, and the company's a disaster. But for the first time, I'm seeing things clearly. You were never the problem. I was." I pressed my fingers to my temple, closing my eyes. "Dad." "I saw your mother in you that night," he continued. "That calm, she had it too. She'd have been proud you did something I never could walk away. For the first time in my life, I heard regret without performance. Not guilt used as leverage, real, raw regret. What happens now, I asked. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe we start by being honest." He let out a weak laugh. "Maybe one day I'll visit. No folders, no demands. Bring coffee," I said softly. "Not debt." His laugh deepened, sad but human. "Deal." When the call ended, I sat there, phone still warm in my hand, the ocean murmuring beyond the window. For years, I'd thought power came from control. Turns out, it comes from release. At that moment, somewhere across the continent, I knew he'd seen the empty space where my box once sat, and finally understood that it wasn't revenge I'd left behind. It was truth. 3 months later, I had almost forgotten what constant tension felt like. Maine had a rhythm that demanded you slow down, gulls screaming over the dock, the smell of salt and coffee drifting through every window. I rented a small place near the water and started teaching a weekly workshop at the Community Center Financial Boundaries for Women. 10 seats, always full. They came with the same stories told in different voices: the mother who kept bailing out her grown son, the sister who couldn't say no, the wife whose husband used her credit card just for now. Each time I spoke, I heard pieces of my past echo back at me. And for the first time, it didn't sting. It clarified. One evening after class, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it until instinct whispered her name. Lena Melissa's voice was quiet, almost shy. "I heard you're teaching," she said. "Dad's doing better. Joined some accountability group. He even writes letters now." I smiled faintly. "That sounds new." "I got a job at a furniture store," she continued. "Real one. No commissions, no excuses. It's quiet." "Quiet's good," I said. "Means you stopped running." She hesitated. "Thank you for not rescuing me." When the call ended, I sat on the porch, the tide inching closer, silver under the moonlight. The past felt like something far behind, not hovering anymore. Somewhere inside the house, the kettle whistled. I stood up, whispered to the waves, "That's enough." A few weeks later, I opened my mailbox and found a postcard. A photo of a fishing dock, the handwriting uneven but familiar. "You were right. I taught you everything about business and nothing about love. Learning now. Proud of you. Dad." I pinned it above my desk beside a note from one of my students that said, "You helped me say no for the first time." That night, I walked down to the shore. No phone, no noise, just the soft rhythm of waves and the kind of freedom that doesn't need permission. If this story hits close to home, drop a comment below. Tell me where you're listening from and what enough means to you.